What if the shadows we cast during daylight hold secrets that only the night can reveal? I often ponder this question as I walk through the dimly lit streets of Salem, Massachusetts, where history clings to every cobblestone and whispers of the past echo through the air. My name is Eliza Hawthorne, and I've always felt a pull toward the unknown, an insatiable curiosity that often leads me deeper into the heart of the darkness than I ever intended to go. Salem, with its rich tapestry of witch trials and whispered legends, is a place where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs. The narrow lanes of Chestnut Street twist and turn like the fates of those who once walked them, and the old colonial houses loom like watchful sentinels, their gabled roofs casting elongated shadows that stretch across the ground like fingers, reaching for something just out of reach. It was on one such evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and impending rain, that I stumbled upon an ancient tome in the dusty corner of an antiquarian shop. The book, bound in cracked leather and embossed with faded gold lettering, seemed to hum with an energy I couldn't ignore. I could feel its weight in my hands, both a burden and a promise. As I thumbed through its yellowed pages, my heart raced with the thrill of discovery. There were rituals and incantations, drawings of symbols I had only seen in nightmares, and a single warning that sent chills down my spine. To awaken the entity, one must first draw blood. That's when the first signs of conflict emerged. A sudden chill swept through the shop, ruffling the pages of the book and extinguishing the flickering candlelight. I glanced up to find the shopkeeper, an elderly woman with eyes that seemed to pierce through my very soul, watching me with a knowing smile. "You've found something powerful, haven't you?" she said, her voice a low whisper that sent shivers racing up my spine. "Be careful, dear. The darkness you seek may not be as forgiving as you hope." As I left the shop, book clutched tightly to my chest, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The streets of Salem felt different now. The shadows deeper, the corners darker. My heart raced, not just with excitement, but with a sense of foreboding. This was not just a book. It was a key to something ancient and malevolent. Something that had been waiting for a moment like this. A moment when someone naive enough to awaken it would finally come along. The shadows of my past began to creep back into my thoughts. Memories of loss and longing that haunted me like specters. My sister, Margaret, had vanished without a trace years ago, leaving me with questions that festered like open wounds. Had she too been drawn into the allure of the arcane? I had spent years looking for answers, but what if the answers lay in that very book I now possessed? The night loomed ahead like an insatiable beast, hungry for the secrets I had unwittingly unleashed. I stood at the threshold of something far greater than I could comprehend. A ritual that promised to awaken an entity of unimaginable power. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. The book began to pulse with a life of its own, and I felt the darkness calling me deeper into its embrace. The question that haunted me now was no longer about the shadows. It was about whether I would have the strength to resist their allure or succumb to the very darkness I had sought to unveil. The shadows felt alive that night, wrapping around me like a shroud as I made my way home. The ancient tome weighed heavily in my satchel, each step echoing the pulse of my own racing heart. I could almost hear the whispers of the book urging me to open it again, to delve deeper into its labyrinth of secrets. Yet a part of me, a small, rational part, screamed that I was treading a dangerous path. Just as I reached my door, I heard a voice call out, "Eliza!" I turned to see my friend and confidant, Nathaniel Clark, striding toward me with urgency etched across his face. Nathaniel had always been my anchor in a world that often felt unmoored. He was a historian, deeply fascinated by Salem's past, but unlike me, he approached it with a healthy skepticism. You've been gone for hours. What on earth have you found? I hesitated, the book's weight pressing down on my conscience. I found something in the antiquarian shop, something I think I need to show you. His brow furrowed as I led him inside. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, I felt the air thicken. I pulled out the book, letting it rest on the worn table as if it were a volatile creature. Nathaniel's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, the light of the oil lamp casting flickering shadows across his face. Eliza, this is not just folklore. These are real rituals. His voice trembled slightly, betraying his skepticism. Yes, but the shopkeeper warned me, I replied, my voice strained. She said it can awaken something powerful, something dangerous. Nathaniel's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. You can't be serious. We've spent years debunking these myths. We can't just dive into this without understanding the consequences. But even as he spoke, I saw the glimmer of intrigue in his eyes, the same allure I had felt moments ago. Maybe it's the answers I've been searching for, I said, feeling desperation seep into my words. Margaret, what if there's a way to find her? The mention of my sister hung in the air, thick with unspoken grief. Nathaniel took a step closer, his expression softening. Eliza, I know how much you want to find her, but you need to be cautious. Remember what happened to those who sought forbidden knowledge. His tone turned serious, the weight of history pressing upon us both. Before I could respond, a strange noise echoed from the shadows of my small living room. A low, guttural sound that sent chills racing down my spine. Nathaniel and I exchanged worried glances as the shadows seemed to swell, creeping toward us like dark tendrils seeking warmth. I felt the book vibrate on the table, pulsing as if it were breathing. What was that? Nathaniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, I admitted, fear creeping into my chest. But I think it's connected to the book. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat before returning, revealing a figure standing in the doorway. My heart dropped as I recognized the silhouette. It was the shopkeeper, her presence as unsettling as it was expected. You've made a choice, she said, her voice low and resonant. And now you must face the consequences. What do you want? I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. Only to guide you, she replied, stepping into the light. Her eyes glinted with an otherworldly knowledge. But be warned, the entity you seek to awaken is not the only thing that stirs in the dark. You must be prepared to confront not only the darkness outside, but the shadows within yourselves. The weight of her words settled heavily between us. I realized that this was no longer just about uncovering the truth of my sister's disappearance. I was entangled in a web of ancient magic, facing dangers that transcended my understanding. The shadows were growing bolder, and I was on the precipice of something that could either reveal the truth or plunge me into an abyss from which there would be no return. Are you ready to dive deeper? The shopkeeper asked, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath hitch. I glanced at Nathaniel, searching for reassurance, but I found only uncertainty reflected in his gaze. The darkness beckoned, and I knew that whatever lay ahead would test not just my resolve, but the very fabric of our friendship. I don't know, I whispered, but I can't turn back now. And with that, the shadows began to close in. As the shadows pressed in around us, I felt a surge of panic. What do you mean by consequences? I demanded, my voice trembling despite my efforts to remain steady. The shopkeeper's lips curled into a faint smile, one that sent a shiver down my spine. Knowledge has a price, dear Eliza, she replied cryptically. You seek the truth, but truth is rarely a straightforward path. Before I could press her further, Nathaniel's voice broke through my mounting fear. Eliza, we need to consider what this really means. We've always thought of the past, as a collection of stories. But what if those stories are alive? What if they're interconnected in ways we can't understand? His eyes darted to the book, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. "Look," I said, trying to focus, despite the growing chaos around us. "I need to know about Margaret. This book might hold the key. If it can help me find her, I have to try." "Perhaps you should question why you're so desperate to find her," the shopkeeper interjected, her tone soothing yet laced with a hidden edge. "The past can sometimes twist the very fabric of reality." Her words echoed in my mind, and I recalled the fragmented memories of my sister, the laughter, the arguments, the way she had vanished without a trace. But there was something else, something I had buried deep. I remembered the night of the storm, the way Margaret had looked at me just before she disappeared. "You'll regret it if you dig too deep, Eliza." Those had been her last words, to me, spoken with a foreboding I had dismissed at the time. Suddenly, the air grew charged, and the shadows began to writhe as if they were alive. The book trembled again, startling me. I rushed to steady it, but my fingers slipped, and it fell open to a page marked with a strange sigil. A rush of icy wind enveloped the room, extinguishing the lamp and plunging us into darkness once again. A voice, low and resonant, seemed to emanate from the very walls around us. "Margaret, you should not have come," it whispered, chilling me to the core. I felt Nathaniel's hand grasp mine, but even his touch couldn't anchor me against the rising tide of dread. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, my heart racing. "It's like she's warning me." Nathaniel squeezed my hand tighter. "Eliza, this is not just about finding your sister. We're being pulled into something much larger, something that doesn't want us here." As I processed his words, a realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. Had I somehow provoked this entity by seeking the truth about my sister? Had my own desperation awakened something that was better left undisturbed? Before I could voice my fears, the shadows surged forward, coiling around Nathaniel and me. I felt the darkness seep into my mind, blurring the lines between past and present. Memories I had long buried began to surface. Images of my childhood, of Margaret's laughter turning to screams, of a family torn apart by secrets I had never fully understood. "Stop it!" I shouted, realizing I was not just confronting the shadows in my living room, but the ones lurking within myself. I turned to face the shopkeeper, but she was gone, leaving only her ominous words echoing in the silence. "Now you must confront the truth," I heard her voice whisper. Panic surged within me as I clutched the book, knowing I stood at a crossroads where every choice would lead me deeper into the unknown. I could no longer separate my quest for Margaret from the darkness that surrounded us. The truth was no longer just a search for my sister. It was a battle against the very shadows that sought to consume me. "Where do we go from here?" Nathaniel asked, his voice shaky. I looked into the depths of the shadows, feeling the weight of our shared history, the burdens we had both carried. "We go deeper," I replied, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. "We have to face whatever this is together." And with that, I knew we had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. The darkness beckoned, and I felt its pull, promising answers but demanding sacrifices I was not yet prepared to make. The shadows writhed around us, thickening like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. "Eliza, think about this," Nathaniel urged, his voice barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. But I could barely think, let alone reason. The whispers swirled, a cacophony of half-formed threats and fragmented memories that clawed at my mind. I felt the weight of the book in my hands, its pages fluttering as if eager to divulge their secrets, or perhaps to warn me away. "Nathaniel!" I shouted, my voice echoing wildly in the void. "What if we're not just searching for Margaret? What if we're entangled in something far worse?" "Then we make our choice now," he replied, his grip on my hand firm and resolute. We can't back down. We've already crossed too far into this. A horrific realization slithered through my mind. The shopkeeper had known. She had seen our desperation and used it against us. This wasn't merely about my sister. It was a trap, and I had willingly walked into it, driven by a longing that blurred my judgment. But what choice did I have now? The shadows were alive and they were hungry. "Margaret!" I cried out, my voice raw with emotion. "If you're here, if you can hear me, please, show me what happened. I need to know." The darkness around us pulsed in response, and for a moment, everything stilled. Then, with a rush, the shadows coalesced into a figure, an outline of a woman, familiar yet ghostly. My heart raced as I gasped. "Margaret?" "No, Eliza," the figure replied, her voice a haunting echo. "I am not her. I am what she left behind." The darkness tightened around us, the air thick with sorrow and regret. "You sought the truth, and now you must bear its weight." "I won't be afraid," I shouted defiantly, even as fear gripped my heart. "If you're a part of her, if you know where she is, tell me." The figure flickered, and suddenly I could see fragments of memories flashing around us. Margaret smiling in the sun, her face twisted in terror, the storm raging outside. Each memory was a thread woven into the tapestry of our lives, but the darker strands threatened to swallow them whole. Nathaniel stepped forward, his brows furrowed. "What do you want from us?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the trembling of his hands. "You're feeding on her fear, but we're not here to be your prey." "Fear is but a vessel," the shadowed figure whispered, its voice chilling me to the bone. "Fear leads to knowledge, and knowledge to power. What will you sacrifice to uncover the truth?" My heart raced in my chest as I faced the entity. "I won't lose anyone else," I declared, determination rising within me. "I will not trade my sister's memory for power or fear." But as I spoke, I felt the shadows tightening their grip on Nathaniel, pulling him into their depths. "Eliza!" he gasped, struggling against their force. "You have to choose, me or the truth." The world around me swirled, the shadows shrieking. With hunger, I stood at the precipice of despair, torn between my love for Nathaniel and my desperate need to find Margaret. The answer lay within me, but would I have the courage to face it? "Choose wisely," the figure warned, its voice a chilling echo of my own doubts. The weight of the moment pressed down on me, and I knew the time for hesitation was over. The truth loomed before me, a double-edged sword that could cut through the darkness or deepen the shadows forever. I took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever price I had to pay. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest, and shouted into the darkness, "I choose the truth!" The shadows recoiled, shrieking as if my words had cut through them like a blade. Nathaniel's grip on my arm faltered, and I felt the pull of the abyss loosen, if only for a moment. The figure flickered again, its form warping as if trying to resist the revelation. "Truth comes at a cost," it warned, its voice echoing, with an otherworldly resonance. "Are you prepared to pay?" "I don't care!" I screamed, my voice shaking but resolute. "Just show me!" In an instant, the memories erupted around us like a storm, swirling in a frenzy of color and sound. I could see Margaret, her laughter ringing like a chime, but then the laughter twisted into cries of despair. A vision surged forth. Margaret, standing at the edge of a cliff, the shadows whispering to her, wrapping around her like a lover's embrace. I realized then that she had not just been taken. She had chosen to listen to the darkness. "No!" I cried, as if I could somehow change the past. The shadows surged forward, and I felt their icy fingers claw at my consciousness, dragging me into the depths of despair. But just as I felt myself slipping away, Nathaniel's voice broke through the chaos. "Eliza! Fight it!" He had broken, free from the shadow's grip, and was at my side, pulling me back from the brink. I latched onto his strength, his presence grounding me against the tide of despair. With a surge of will, I faced the figure once more. "You may have taken her, but you will not take us," I yelled, channeling every ounce of my fear into defiance. The figure recoiled, its form flickering violently as the memories shattered into a million shards. The shadows shrieked, collapsing inward, and suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the book in my hands, illuminating our surroundings. The figure screamed, a sound that reverberated through the air, and then it was gone. The aftermath was a chaotic stillness. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath as the remnants of the darkness receded. Nathaniel knelt beside me, his face pale and etched with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice trembling. I think so," I replied, though I could feel a weight settling in my chest, an echo of the shadows that lingered like a scar. I looked around, the remnants of the darkness dissipating, but leaving behind a fog of uncertainty. But what about Margaret? What did we just see? Nathaniel shook his head, his expression grave. "I don't know, but whatever it was, it feels like it's far from over." As we stood up, I noticed a small fragment of shadow coiling at the edge of my vision. It felt alive, pulsing with an energy that was both captivating and terrifying. I shivered, realizing that while we had momentarily escaped the darkness, it had not been vanquished entirely. And then there were the others. The shopkeeper's warning echoed in my mind. What had she truly unleashed? I glanced at Nathaniel, and he seemed to sense it too, a lingering unease that hung in the air like smoke. "Maybe we should go back," he suggested, his brow furrowing. "There could be more answers there, or more dangers." I nodded, still shaken but resolute. "We need to understand what happened to Margaret, and why the shadows were calling to her." As we made our way back through the remnants of the darkness, I felt a new determination rising within me. I had survived, but the scars of this confrontation would linger. And as I glanced back one last time at the fading shadows, I realized that this was only the beginning. A mystery still lay ahead, one that would test the very fabric of my resolve, and perhaps draw us deeper into a world where fear and truth danced dangerously close. As we stepped back into the remnants of the shop, the enveloping darkness still clung to the corners of my mind. The air crackled with unvoiced questions, and the warnings of the shopkeeper echoed ominously in my ears. I felt it. The shadows were far from gone, lurking just outside the periphery of my vision. Suddenly the ground trembled, and two paths opened up before us, each shrouded in darkness yet pulsing with an unsettling energy. One path led into a grove of twisted trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The other opened onto a serene, moonlit lake, its surface reflecting a tranquil sky that felt achingly familiar. Nathaniel and I exchanged glances, fear and determination mingling in our gazes. "We have to choose," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The grove beckoned with the promise of answers, a chance to confront the darkness that had claimed Margaret. But at what cost? The lake, on the other hand, glimmered with hope, but whispered of isolation, potentially sealing our fates away from the world. I could feel the weight of my choice pressing down on me. "If we go to the grove, we might discover the truth of what happened to Margaret," I said, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "But it could be our end." "Or we could choose the lake," Nathaniel replied, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and dread. "But what if it seals our fate in a different way? What if we lose ourselves forever My heart raced, torn between two equally terrifying endings. The shadows from the grove slithered closer, and the lake's surface rippled. Reflecting a face I longed to see again. "Choose now, Eliza. We cannot linger," Nathaniel urged, his grip tightening on my arm. In that moment, I understood that either choice would come with unimaginable pain, a truth I had to face. I took a deep breath, ready to step forward into the unknown. But as I opened my mouth to make my choice, time seemed to freeze. The shadows and the tranquility converged in a dizzying blur. And then, silence. As the darkness closed in, I felt the weight of both choices crashing upon me. My heart sank. I was about to decide my fate, but the true horror lay in knowing that no matter what I chose, the outcome would be equally devastating. In that suspended moment, I realized, sometimes, the hardest choices lead to the darkest paths. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below, telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.